At number 20, we have this Minor Wall Breakers deck with a new Skeleton Army evolution. This deck has some of the most broken cards in the meta, but the real game changer here is the Goblin Curse and Zap. Imagine your opponent drops a Skeleton Army in the back, which, by the way, is going to be a very frequent play in this meta. Together, this combo can instantly destroy the Skeleton Army and turn them into goblins. This will surprise your opponent, and before they'll even have time to react, their tower is gone. But apart from that, Miner and Wall Breakers are also a great combo on offense. For defense, you have the Ice Wizard and Goblin Hut, which can stop any push. Overall, this deck gets a high score in almost every category, but it's a bit hard to upgrade. At number 19, we have P.E.K.K.A. Bridge Spam. This deck is about to get even better when the Royal Ghost evolution releases. Apply enough pressure on the bridge using your Bandit and Royal Ghost. Try to bait out your opponent's counters for the Battle Ram. Once those counters are out of cycle, go all in with a Battle Ram push. The Electro Wizard and minions are key units for defense, while the P.E.K.K.A. can destroy any beatdown push coming your way. This deck gets a high score on offense, although it's not that easy to play or upgrade. At number 18, we have Monk Bridge Spam. This new deck is designed to counter this meta. You have the Mother Witch and arrows to destroy the Skeleton Army. Using the Evo Lumberjack and Battle Ram combo will be great, because the Evo Lumberjack can destroy the Skeleton Army and its general. The Monk is great to counter all those ranged units, and you can place him in front of your push if your opponent has a lot of them. This deck receives a great score on offense, but it's definitely not the most free-to-play friendly. At number 17, we have Goblin Drill Wall Breakers Spam. The goal of this deck is simple. Use your Skeleton Army and Dart Goblin to bait out the small spells of your opponent. Once those spells are out, hit them with a Goblin Drill and Wall Breakers push. Your opponent won't be able to stop that much swarm, and you'll win right away. Use the Skeleton King's ability wisely. You can split the Skeleton Army in the back and use the Skeleton King to block the Army General so that he moves slowly. This way, the rest of the skeletons in the other lane become immortal and can instantly wreck anything in that lane. Overall, this deck is rated high on offense, but you need to be good at the game to play it. And if you want to get better at the game, then make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. At number 16, we have Lava Loon. One thing you'll notice here is that this deck still runs Vines, despite the nerf. In my opinion, Vines still pair really well with Lava Hound decks because it basically ensures that your balloon will get at least one hit, and in most cases that's usually enough. The evolved Valkyrie is broken on defense, and together with the guards, form a really solid defense for this deck. Make sure to keep your arrows in hand every time you go for a Lava Loon push. You need to take out those minions, Dart Goblins or Princesses instantly. This deck receives a high score on offense and is quite easy to play too. At number 15, we have Mighty Miner Wall Breakers Bait. This is a very cheap and aggressive deck. It relies on the principle of baiting out your opponent's cards using your Skeleton Army and Dart Goblins, so that your Skeleton Barrel and Wall Breakers become unstoppable on offense. The evolved Skeleton Barrel is really hard to counter if you don't have a small spell in cycle. The Mighty Miner is one champion that's become extremely broken after the removal of 3-card cycle. He'll help you take care of tanks, while the Dart Goblin wrecks their entire push. This deck is meant to be played very aggressively, therefore it gets a great score on offense. At number 14, we have Golem Pump Beatdown. Golem was extremely strong last season, and I expect it to be dominant in this meta too. The Electro Dragon evolution can totally cook your opponent if they don't have lightning, and it's a great counter to the Skeleton Army evolution. Make sure to always pair your Golem with the Lumberjack. You need to stack as many pumps as possible, even if you have to sacrifice a bit of damage. If they try to punish you for playing your Golem, you can defend cheaply with minions. Overall, this deck is extremely simple to play and very easy to upgrade too. At number 13, we have Electro Giant Beatdown. This is an archetype I think will break this meta. The Electro Giant is great against the Skeleton Army, and if you pair him with a Bowler and Baby Dragon, the push becomes even more deadly. You can use the same trick with the Skeleton Army I mentioned earlier. Split it in the back and have your Electro Giant slow down the Army General. The Goblin Hut, Bowler and Tornado make up an impenetrable defense. Always have your lightning ready to drop it instantly on your opponent's buildings or mini tanks. This deck is rated very high in all aspects and is really easy to play. At At number 12, we have Royal Recruit's Bait. This is an extremely no-skill deck. Since everyone will be running arrows in this meta, this deck is designed to take advantage of that. You have 3 main cards to bait out your opponent's arrows: Firecracker, Skeleton Barrel, and Wall Breakers. If your opponent uses arrows on even one of these, there is no way they'll be able to defend the other 2. The recruits block up the entire lane on defense, while the Mighty Miner burns down tanks quickly, making defense smooth. It can be a bit hard to get damage with this deck, so your goal is to be extremely annoying on defense. Force your opponent to overspend on offense, and once they make a mistake, go all in and take their tower. This deck is free-to-play friendly and has insane defensive potential. At number 11, we have Logbait. I think Logbait is going to be really great in this meta now that Vines has been nerfed. It'll actually counter a lot of popular decks in the meta like Electro Giant, Lava Loon, and especially Bridge Spam. Make sure that you cycle back to your Goblin Barrel evolution as quickly as possible. Try to split damage in both lanes so that you can confuse your opponents with the evolved Goblin Barrel. This deck doesn't have a big spell, so applying pressure is key. Try to get damage by using your Princess at Bridge and by playing tricky barrels. Knight, Dart Goblin, and Inferno Dragon do nicely on defense. Therefore, this deck is well-rounded in terms of both offense and defense and is one of the most free-to-play deck on this list. At number 10, we have Hog Rider Earthquake. The key card in this deck is the Goblin Stein. It's a very important card because it can pair really well with your Hog Rider and assist in destroying the skeleton army. You can also use the Electro Spirit, Log, or Earthquake to instantly kill it. Firecracker is your main card on defense, and it's very necessary that you protect her at all costs. Since mostly everyone will have arrows, you always need to cycle your Firecracker first on defense. This way, if they drop arrows on the first Firecracker, you'll have a second one ready instantly. This deck takes skill to play, but it's quite easy to upgrade. At number 9, we have Queen Bow. The Vines nerf also benefited Queen Bow a lot. This deck is really solid on defense, and you can have great success with it if you play perfectly. Try to outcycle your opponent's counters to your X-Bow, but if you can't do that, then just defend all game and Fireball cycle in the end. This deck will take some time getting used to, as it's certainly not easy to play, but it has also got one of the best defenses out of any deck in Clash Royale. At number 8, we have Classic Miner Wall Breakers. This is a kind of deck that basically never dies regardless of the meta. It has an insanely fast cycle, meaning you'll always be able to outcycle your opponent's counters. Use your miners smartly and have them tank for your wall breakers. The bats and spear goblins can also provide a cheap but effective push combined with the miner. For defense, you have the knight and cannon, plus your other cheap cards can do the job as well. This deck has a high score on offense and defense. It's also free to play, but it requires an insane amount of skill to play. At number 7, we have Classic Splash Yard. In a meta where beatdown is dominant, Splash Yard will always be the number 1 deck to counter those toxic decks. It has the best defense out of any deck in the game, but it's actually the RNG factor of the graveyard that's more annoying for the opponent to deal with. The skeletons from the graveyard can get a lot of damage, even if your opponent spends a lot of elixir because of their RNG pattern. The defense of this deck is unbreakable. Ice Wizard, Baby Dragon, Tombstone, and Tornado. These are literally the best defensive cards in Clash Royale, and you got them all in one deck. Make sure to be very patient while playing this deck. Always defend first, and then counter push. Overall, this deck gets the max score on defense and is quite free to play as well. At number 6, we have Goblin Drill Poison. The Furnace got nerfed, but it still pairs really well with the Goblin Drill. That's because the opponent will always have to drop something right on top of their tower to defend against their drill. This allows the fire spirits of the Furnace to splash on them and the tower both, dealing chip damage continuously. This deck is also very fast, meaning you can spam drill relentlessly. The Royal Delivery is a very underrated counter to the Skeleton Army evolution. You can drop it right on top of it, and it will wreck the general instantly. Make sure to always pair your Goblin Drill with Poison and Snowball if your opponent is using swarms to counter it. This deck is quite hard to play, but it has great offensive potential and is the easiest deck to upgrade on this list. At number 5, we have Giant Sparky. You might be surprised to see Sparky on this list, but let me tell you, this is surely going to be one of the most destructive decks in this meta. You have so much arrows bait in this deck with a minion horde and skeleton army. Once your opponent uses arrows on one of these cards, the other absolutely destroys them. This deck has a very high potential of 3 crowning your opponent in a single push. You may need to make some smart predictions from time to time on offense. This deck is all offense and no defense really, but a single push is enough if you play everything right. Sparky in the back, Giant in the front, and depending on your opponent's counters, you can go Mini P.E.K.K.A. and Minion Horde in either the same or opposite lane. This deck gets a very high score on offense and is quite easy to play and upgrade. At number 4, we have Mortar Bait. I think this is one of the most underrated decks in this meta. I mean, look at this deck. It's so well balanced. For offense, you have the Mortar and the Miner for chip damage. For defense, you have an insane combo of Mortar, Cannon Cart, Minions, and Dart Goblins. There's just so much to bait arrows with, and once they're out, go all in with the evolved skeleton army. Think of it. You split the skeleton army in the back, use the skeleton king to slow down the general, and then drop a mortar in the opposite lane of the general where the other skeletons are going. What's the opponent even supposed to do? He can't kill those skeletons and they'll defend the mortar while being immortal. You can make so many creative plays with this deck, therefore it gets a high score in every aspect. At number 3, we have Giant Graveyard. When Skeleton Army Evolution was announced, the first deck that came to mind was Giant Graveyard. This deck not only features the broken Evo Skeleton Army, but also the evolved Witch, who, despite her nerf, is as strong as before. This is just such an insane deck on offense. Combining Graveyard with a tank like Giant, which deals heavy damage, is brutal. The only way to defend that push properly is with Swarms. But if they drop Swarms on the Graveyard, you can instantly kill them with arrows. It's not really possible to defend this push without taking any damage, which makes this deck extremely annoying. This deck gets a super high score on offense and is relatively easy to play. At number 2, we have Minor Wallbreaker's Poison. This deck is recommended by the pros if you want to push trophies fast. It doesn't really have a proper counter because of its outplay potential. Use the Skeleton Army and Skeleton King together to create a devastating immortal combo. Miner plus Wall Breakers will be your go-to push. Try to bait out your opponent's spells using your minions and Goblin Hut. Overall, this deck is rated highly in every aspect and can beat anything if played right. As the best deck for this meta, at number 1, we have Royal Giant Cycle. The Royal Giant Evolution destroys the skeleton army instantly and the Mother Witch turns them into pigs. Your own skeleton army plus zappies and fishermen can counter any beatdown push. This deck is rated extremely high in all categories because it has 2 of the best evolutions for this meta. But which are the other best and worst evolutions in Clash Royale at the moment? To find out, click on this video.